What if the reason they slowly stop replying isn't because you said something wrong, but because you were too available, too predictable, too easy to understand? From the very start, think about it, you reply. Fast, you're polite, you show interest, you keep the conversation alive, and yet somehow the energy drops. They go from excited to distant, and you're left wondering what changed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Nothing changed except the fact that there was no space left for them to think about you. Attraction doesn't grow inside constant conversation. It grows in the gaps between messages, in the moments where they don't fully have you figured out, when you're always nice, always responsive, always continuing the conversation. You remove the one thing that actually creates curiosity, which is uncertainty. Now, this doesn't mean being rude or playing games. It means understanding how human psychology works. When something feels easily accessible, the brain stops assigning value to it. But when there's a slight delay, a moment of silence, or an unfinished thread, the mind naturally leans in, trying to complete the story. That's why sometimes the person who texts less is thought about more, because they create mental presence without even trying. Imagine two scenarios in one. You reply instantly every time, you keep the chat flowing nonstop, and in the other, you leave small pauses. You don't always finish your thoughts completely. You give just enough to spark interest, but not enough to satisfy it fully. Which one do you think stays longer in someone's mind? It's not about saying more. It's about leaving something unsaid, because the real conversation, the one that builds attraction, doesn't happen on the screen. It happens in their head. And if you never give them the chance to feel that gap, to wonder about you, to replay your words in their mind, then no matter how nice you are, you'll always be forgettable. So the real question is, are you texting to express yourself, or are you texting in a way that makes them think about you even when you're not there? Here's where it gets even more interesting, because most people think attraction is built by keeping the conversation alive, but in reality, it's built by controlling the emotional rhythm of that conversation. Think of texting like a song. If there's no pause, no variation, no silence, it just becomes noise, and the brain tunes it out. The same thing happens when you're constantly available. You remove anticipation, and anticipation is one of the strongest emotional drivers of attraction. When someone doesn't know exactly when you'll reply or what you'll say next, their mind starts filling in the gaps. They begin to imagine you. They replay your last message. They subconsciously invest more energy into you. And that investment is what creates attachment. This is why unfinished conversations are so powerful. Instead of explaining everything or replying with long, complete thoughts, you leave threads slightly open, not in a confusing way, but in a way that invites curiosity. For example, instead of answering everything at once, you might respond with something intriguing but incomplete, or you shift the topic right when it gets interesting. This creates a loop in their mind that stays active even after the chat ends. And here's the key part: you're not doing this to manipulate you. You're doing it to stop overgiving, because overgiving kills tension, and without tension, attraction feels flat. You've probably noticed how sometimes after a great conversation, things suddenly fade. It's not because the vibe wasn't there, it's because everything was already said. There was nothing left to wonder about, no emotional momentum left to carry forward. So the goal isn't to text more or less, it's to text in a way that leaves an imprint, something that lingers after the screen go. As dark, something that makes them check their phone, not because you texted, but because they're thinking about you. And that shift right there is what separates someone who is liked from someone who is remembered. And this is the part most people never realize, because it feels so counterintuitive. The goal is not to make every conversation perfect. It's to make every interaction slightly incomplete in the best way possible. Because perfection closes the loop, while curiosity keeps it open when you're too nice. In texts, you try to resolve everything, you answer every question, you maintain constant warmth. And while that feels right in the moment, it quietly removes the emotional friction that creates desire. Real attraction needs a little bit of mystery, a little bit of space where the other person leans in instead of you always leaning forward. So instead of asking, how can I be more interesting, you should start asking, where should I stop talking? Where can I leave room for them to come toward me? Because the moment they start investing even a little more than you, that's when the dynamic shifts, and you become the one they think about without trying. This doesn't mean disappearing randomly or playing cold. It means being intentional with your presence. You don't always respond at the peak of conversation. You don't always give full closure, and you don't make yourself constantly predictable, because predictability creates comfort, but a mix of comfort and uncertainty creates attraction, and the balance between those two is where everything changes. So next time you're texting someone and you feel the urge to keep the conversation going, just pause for a second and ask yourself, am I adding value right now, or am I just filling silence? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And in that silence, you give them the space to feel your absence. And when someone starts to feel your absence, that's when they begin to truly notice your presence.